He chased the American dream and abandoned us. 3 years later, justice knocked on my door. I didn't lose my husband to death. I lost him to a dream he loved more than us. One evening, I came home from work in San Diego County, dust on my shoes, hope still in my chest, and my children looked at me like orphans. "Mummy," my youngest whispered. "Daddy went to America."
No goodbye.
No letter. No warning. Just 12 years of marriage erased like chalk in the rain. This is not a story about immigration. It's a story about betrayal, silence, survival, and the kind of justice that waits patiently before it strikes. Before I continue, please subscribe to my channel to see more interesting stories. Thank you. The day love became a lie.
Pain has a sound.
For me, it was the creak of our front door swinging open into emptiness. We lived in Tijuana, just minutes from the U.S. border. For 3 years, my husband Diego talked about America like it was heaven. He was a nurse, smart and ambitious, and he believed the U.S. would turn him into someone bigger, richer, freer. I didn't say no. I said wait. We had 2 boys. Rent. School fees. A life that needed planning. But patience sounded like imprisonment to him. Soon, he stopped contributing to the household. Then he borrowed money. Then one night, I noticed the gold band missing from his finger. "I sold it," he said coldly. "Dreams cost money." That night, I slept beside a stranger. Weeks later, I returned from work, smiling, until I saw 2 backpacks by the door. The boys were quiet. Too quiet. "He left," Lucas said. "He said he'll come back for us." That was the moment love officially died. A single mother is born. I called his phone until my battery died. Emails. Messages.
Silence.
Days became weeks. Weeks became months. The house echoed with absence. I learned to do things I no longer needed to do. I cooked meals he used to cook. I cried in the shower so my sons wouldn't hear me break. At night, I lay awake imagining him in Los Angeles, New York, Houston, smiling without us. The border lights mocked me every evening. I told the boys he was working hard. I told myself he would return. But children feel truth before adults admit it. Mateo stopped asking about him after 6 months. That hurt more than any goodbye could have. By the end of the first year, I stopped checking my inbox. Because hope, when starved long enough, becomes poison. Burying the dead without a body. A year passed. Then 2. Diego became a ghost. No social media, no trace, no mutual contacts. People whispered. Some blamed me. Some pitied me. I sold my wedding photos. Not for money, for survival. I focused on my sons. Therapy. Soccer practice. Movie nights. Slowly, laughter returned to our home. That's when Marisol entered our lives. He was calm, gentle, American-born, living in Arizona. He loved my boys without trying to replace anyone. He never asked about Diego. And for the first time, I felt alive without guilt. That scared me. Happiness has a price. Marisol and I built something real. The boys smiled again, genuinely. We moved to Phoenix, Arizona, chasing sunlight instead of ghosts. 3 years after Diego vanished, I finally slept without nightmares. Then came the knock. Saturday morning. Pancakes on the stove. Laughter in the air. I opened the door, and time collapsed. Diego stood there. Not the man I married. This version was broken. Older. Dirt under her nails. Clothes hanging like regret. The smell of streets and sorrow clung to his skin. "Daniela," he whispered. "I need help." I saw my past, and I slammed the door. The woman at the door. He begged.
Cried.
Collapsed on the porch. I didn't let him in. Not because I hated him, but because my children deserved peace. Later, he messaged me from a borrowed phone. He said the agent lied. That he was trafficked. That America swallowed him whole. He wanted forgiveness. He wanted home. But he didn't realize something. The woman he abandoned had changed. And justice was already awake. He waited outside my gate for 3 nights. On the 4th night, I agreed to meet him, Not as a wife, but as a witness. We sat across from each other at a diner in Yuma, Arizona, the kind of place where neon lights flicker like tired souls. He spoke in fragments. California. A fake nursing contract. A van with no windows. Years that vanished into survival. I was sold, he said, eyes hollow. I cleaned houses, then worse. I tried to escape twice. I listened. I didn't interrupt. Not because I believed everything, but because pain, even when self-inflicted, deserves to be heard. When he finished, he reached for my hand. I want my family back. I pulled away. You abandoned us, I said calmly. Trafficked or not, you chose to leave without a word. That's when I noticed something strange. His story had holes. Too many. And justice doesn't rush. It investigates. The file I never meant to open. Marisol worked in immigration advocacy. He never asked me to dig, but he supported truth. Using old documents Diego had left behind, we tracked the so-called agent. The name didn't exist, but the phone number did. It led to Dallas, Texas. And what we found shattered everything. Diego hadn't crossed illegally. He entered legally, on a visitor visa. There were employment records under a different name. Cash payments. Addresses. No police reports. No missing persons alert. No rescue file. He wasn't trafficked the way he claimed. He was hiding. And worse, he had sent money back home. Not to us. To a private account. That night, I realized something painful. He didn't lose everything in America. He lost us, by choice. When the children asked, Lucas overheard her voice message one evening. Is that Dad? He asked quietly. I didn't lie. Yes. He nodded.
No tears. No anger.
Tell him we're okay, he said. He doesn't have to come back. That sentence cut deeper than betrayal ever could. Children don't forgive loudly. They forgive by moving on. Diego began showing up everywhere, church parking lots, grocery stores, even the boys' school. I filed a restraining warning. He cried to neighbors. Played the victim. But victims don't abandon their children in silence. That's when I made a decision. Not revenge with rage. Revenge with truth. The public mirror. With Marisol's help, I contacted an investigative journalist in Los Angeles, someone who specialized in migration fraud and fake victim narratives. I didn't smear Diego.
He handed over facts.
Bank transfers. Travel logs. Employment stubs. His recorded messages contradicting himself. The story went live quietly, but it spread loudly. Not his face. Not his name. Just the truth. Organizations pulled away from helping him. Churches stopped collecting donations. The sympathy dried up. He called me screaming. You ruined me.
No, y replía.
You did. Forgiveness is not obligation. He showed up one last time, this time sober, clean, stripped of lies. I lost everything, he whispered.
So did we, I said.
I offer him something unexpected.
Réhabilitation contact.
Counseling resources. A chance to rebuild. Without us. I forgive you, I told him. But forgiveness doesn't mean return. He broke down. Justice had arrived, not with punishment, but boundaries. And the final reckoning was still coming. The letter from the court. Justice doesn't always arrive with handcuffs. Sometimes it comes in an envelope. 3 weeks after the article circulated, I received a notice from the Maricopa County Family Court in Arizona. Diego had filed a petition, not for reconciliation, but for partial custody. He claimed abandonment, emotional distress, and wrongful exclusion from his children's lives. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was desperate. 12 years of marriage. 3 years of silence. And now he wanted legal recognition as a father. My lawyer didn't laugh. He has no case, he said. But this will expose everything. And that was exactly what I wanted. Because courts don't deal in emotions. They deal in records. And records remember what people try to forget. Evidence has a memory. We prepared quietly. School reports showing I was the sole caregiver. Medical records listing only my name. Emails sent, never replied to. Witness statements from teachers, neighbors, counselors. But the most powerful evidence was in paper. It was time. 3 years of absence. 3 birthdays missed. 3 Christmases without a call. Diego arrived in court wearing borrowed confidence. He cried, spoke about exploitation, claimed he was afraid to contact us. Then my attorney asked one question. If you were afraid, why did you send money to a private account instead of your children? Silence filled the room. The judge leaned forward. Truth had taken the stand. When the past testifies, the judge requested child impact statements. Lucas wrote his himself. He didn't accuse. He didn't insult. He wrote, I love my mom. She stayed. That's all. Mateo drew a picture, 3 stick figures holding hands. Only one adult. The courtroom went quiet. Diego wept uncontrollably. For the first time, his pain wasn't louder than ours. It was smaller. And reality finally fit. The ruling. The judge's voice was calm.
Precise.
Final. Diego's custody request was denied. No visitation until long-term rehabilitation verified stability and supervised therapy, if the children ever consented. The court acknowledged his hardship, but ruled that abandonment, regardless of motive, had consequences. I didn't smile. Justice doesn't require celebration. It requires balance. Diego looked at me as if waiting for mercy. But mercy had already been given to the children. The quiet victory. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. I said nothing. I drove home to my sons. That night, we sat on the porch watching the Arizona sunset paint the sky in gold and fire. Marisol joined us, his hand resting gently on mine. For the first time, I felt something deeper than anger. Relief. Not because Diego lost, but because my children were finally protected. Yet the story wasn't over. Because sometimes the biggest payment isn't legal. It's what life gives you when you choose integrity over revenge. And that payment was coming. When desperation finds a microphone. I thought the court ruling would end it. I was wrong. Diego didn't disappear. He rebranded. A month after the judgment, Marisol showed me a video circulating online, filmed somewhere in Los Angeles, California. Diego sat in front of a camera, hair brushed, face carefully lit, voice trembling just enough to sound believable. He told the world he was a survivor. A trafficked man. A father denied her children by a cold, unforgiving wife. He didn't mention the silence. He didn't mention the money he sent elsewhere. He didn't mention the choice. The video went viral. And for the first time since this began, strangers were judging me. Justice doesn't panic, but it does prepare. The call I didn't expect. 2 days later, I received a call from Washington, D.C. A non-profit advocacy group wanted my side. They had reviewed the court transcripts and noticed inconsistencies in Diego's story. We believe in survivors, the woman said gently. But we also believe in truth. For the first time, someone with a platform didn't rush to save a narrative. They examined it. I sent them everything. And waited. Because truth, when given time, doesn't whisper. It echoes. The confession. The non-profit released a statement. Then an interview. Then documents. They didn't accuse Diego of lying outright. But they confirmed what he never wanted exposed. He had opportunities to return, to contact, to protect his children, and he chose not to. Cornered by facts, Diego did something unexpected. He went live. He admitted leaving without telling me. Admitted prioritizing his dream. Admitted believing success would erase guilt. I thought I could come back whole, he sobbed. I didn't know I'd come back empty. For the first time, the world saw his not as a victim or villain, but as a human who made devastating choices. And that changed everything. The question of forgiveness. People asked me if I felt victorious. I didn't. Victory implies defeat. This was closure. Diego sent one final message, not asking to return, not asking for money. He asked, "Did I ever matter?" I answered honestly, "You mattered, but you left." And we learned how to live without you. That was the hardest truth he'd ever face. And the most important one, what justice really looks like. Diego entered a rehabilitation program in New Mexico. Quietly.
No cameras. No simpes y campans.
I didn't block his updates, but I didn't reopen doors either. Justice wasn't destroying her. Justice was letting reality stand untouched. At home, my sons thrived. Marisol became family. And the silence that once screamed now felt peaceful. Still, one final chapter remained. Because poetic justice doesn't rush. It waits for the right ending. The invitation. 3 months of silence passed. Then a letter arrived, handwritten, fragile, forwarded from Santa Fe, New Mexico. It wasn't from Diego. It was from his counselor. He was completing rehabilitation. Not asking for money. Not asking for custody. Not even asking for forgiveness. He was asking for closure. One supervised meeting. No children.
No expectations.
Just words left unsaid. I stared at the letter for a long time. The past doesn't knock twice unless it's invited. Marisol didn't push me either way. He simply said, "Whatever you choose, make sure it sets you free." So I agreed. Not for Diego. For the part of me that never got a goodbye. The last conversation. We met in a quiet room in Santa Fe, sunlight spilling through dusty windows like a memory. He looked healthier.
Smaller. Real.
"I'm not here to ask for anything," he said quickly. "I just needed you to hear me without defending yourself." So I listened. He spoke about arrogance. About believing America would fix the emptiness inside him. About realizing too late that success without love is poverty in disguise. "I didn't lose you because of trafficking," he said. "I lost you because I left." That was the confession I had waited 3 years to hear. And it hurt less than I expected, because I had already healed. The decision that changed everything. Before we parted, he slid an envelope across the table. Inside were documents. A trust fund. Every dollar he ever earned in the U.S., saved quietly after rehab began.
For the boys, he said.
Not as a father. As a consequence. I didn't refuse. I accepted. Not as forgiveness, but as responsibility. That money later funded therapy programs for children of abandonment. Not just my sons. Many others. Diego watched me sign the papers, tears falling freely. This was his punishment. And his redemption. What the children chose. Years later, Lucas and Mateo asked about her. I told them the truth, without bitterness. They chose to write letters.
Short. Honest.
Guarded. Not reunion. Not rejection. Just acknowledgement. Sometimes, justice isn't reunion. It's choice. And that choice belonged to them. I realized then, the greatest revenge isn't what you take. It's what you refuse to give back. When justice finally knocks. On a calm evening in Sedona, Arizona, I stood watching my sons laugh. Whole, confident, unbroken. Marisol stood beside me. I thought about the woman I used to be, begging silence to answer. And the woman I became. Who survived betrayal without becoming cruel. Diego didn't return to our lives. He didn't need to. Justice had already been served. Not with hate. Not with humiliation. But with truth, boundaries, and growth. He chased the American dream and lost his family. I lost my wife and found my strength. That is poetic justice. Sometimes, revenge isn't about destruction. It's about dignity. And sometimes, the loudest justice is a life well lived without the one who betrayed you. If this story moved you, share it. Someone out there needs to hear this ending. Thanks for listening to my story. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share my videos.